Hey everyone, and welcome to our study through the New Testament. And we're looking at the Gospels right now, and we're looking at the 250 events in the life of Jesus. And today we are looking at Jesus heals Peter's mother-in-law and many others. And comes from Matthew 8:14 through 17, Mark 1:29 through 34, and Luke 4:38 and 41. And for today's video, we're really going to look at Matthew and Mark's account. Luke's account kind of was very similar to Matthew and Mark's, and so there was nothing that really pulled out of there that I wasn't able to pull out of Matthew and Mark. And so we see that yesterday they were in the temple and he spoke with authority, and so today they leave and go to Peter's house. And when they arrive at Peter's house, Peter's mother-in-law is sick and bed with fever. So that starts out right away with us realizing that Peter was married. So I don't know how many people know that. It's not something we really talk about a lot when we're studying the pictures and we talk about Peter, but Peter was married. So we can confirm that. Um, and so Jesus finds out she's sick, goes up, touches her, and immediately the fever left her, and she got up and prepared a meal for him. I like that part. But one of the things that we see here is that he didn't just heal her and, well, she felt better as her fever went away. She felt well enough to be able to get up and serve them and prepare a meal for them. So it wasn't, oh, hey, I gave you some medicine type thing and now you feel a little bit better. She was instantly healed and instantly felt a whole lot better. And so we see that. And I don't know, something is something interesting there about Jesus healing her and instantly. No, don't rest. Don't takes a little bit of time. You've been sick. Get up and prepare a meal for all these people that are in your house. And then we see that evening, many demon possessed people were brought to Jesus and sick people, and he cast out the evil spirits with simple commands, and he healed the sick. And so, Matthew continues in verse 17 here, continues to show that Jesus' kingly nature through the single touch, right? He doesn't have to perform some seance or some crazy routine. He just either speaks it or touches someone, and it's instant. It's just instant. And so, it shows his power over all evil authorities. They fled his presence, especially when he told them. And it also shows his power over all earthly diseases, any earthly diseases. And so he's also going to show his ability eventually to conquer sin. We know that sickness and evil and those things that are in our lives these days are consequences of sin. We didn't have that in the garden, right? There was no sickness, there was no evil. I'll say evil. There was evil to those devil, but there wasn't evil in the human nature. We didn't see that evilness in humans that because they were still, they didn't know about that. They didn't have the knowledge of good and evil, and so those things are a result of sin. And so he has control over demons and these evil spirits and sickness. And so ultimately he's going to conquer sin and have control over it as well. And so what's wonderful about that is eventually when we either pass on or when we're called to heaven, we're not going to have to worry about that. We're not going to have to worry about disease. We're not going to have to worry about sin anymore. And so Jesus's miracles were a taste of what's to come, what we were to see. And so it was a little bit of heaven on earth that people got to see. And so we go to Mark's account, and Mark's is very similar. Not a lot of differences there. But what's interesting is each gospel writer has a slightly different perspective of what he wrote. And I've talked about this before. I like this. I like it when we read three or four different accounts of a story and there's slight differences in that. Now, some people will try to use that to say, well, this means that the Bible contradicts itself, right? Matthew said this, Mark said this, but to me, that speaks the truth to what they're actually writing. They're writing it from their perspective, from what they saw. And we know that if you have five different people watch an event happen and they write down exactly what happened, you're going to have five different stories. I think I spoke about this before. We talked to someone who's a police officer, and he says, if I'm interviewing three or four different people, and every single one of them has the exact same story to the detail, then he goes, I know they're not telling the truth because I know that's a prepared statement. That they got together, knew exactly what they were going to say. He says, but if you go and interview them and there's slight differences in their stories, then he knows they're telling the truth because that's how human nature works. We all see things differently. And so I like that But in Matthew's, right, Jesus touched the woman's hand. In Mark, he helped her up. In Luke, he spoke to the fever and it left her. So there's three different, again, all three of those things probably happened, but it's what the each writer saw that stood out to him that they wrote down. And so they don't conflict. They just, four eyewitnesses with of the same event recalling different details. And so, if anyone ever tries to use that as an example of, oh well, this happened, so the Gospels aren't true or they're contradicting each other, so this that's just just don't pay attention to that. Just know that this is why, and we understand why that's there. And so we see in verse 34 of Mark that Jesus were many people were healed and demons were cast out of many people, but Jesus told them, because the demons knew who he was, he did not allow them to speak. And that's an interesting thing. He had enough power to where he could keep them from speaking. He cast them out and they couldn't even speak. We saw that yesterday where he told one to be silent and he couldn't, and he was silent. And so we asked the question, or a lot of people have asked the question as I've gone through this before. Well, why would he do this? Why would he tell the keep the demons from letting people know who he is? And there's probably more than three. I've got three in here, but one, by commanding them to be silent and them staying silent, it proves his authority and power. All right, it proves who he is. It shows who he is. All right. Number two, Jesus wanted people to believe he was the Messiah because he told them, not because demons told him. All right. I think maybe to him, and we do see a little bit. We're going to see this a little bit later on. The Pharisees and some of the religious leaders try to use that against him, saying, well, he cast them out because they're the same, like he is from Satan, so and so we'll get to that, but so I think he was wanting to show that he wanted to prove who he was through himself, not by demons announcing who he was. And then thirdly, I think he wanted to reveal who he was ultimately on his own timetable, right? He wanted to die on the cross when he chose to die on the cross. All right. And so, he didn't, the more this was announced, the harder this would make his ministry and the more difficult. So he's trying to keep this from being spread everywhere because he wants to do it on his own timetable. The demons knew who he was. They called him the Son of God, the Holy One, that from God. We see that in Luke 4:34. And because they knew he was Christ, Jesus was going to show himself to be the suffering servant before he became the great king. And that's the thing, they never truly understood who he was. Even his disciples and apostles, they didn't understand who he truly was until after his death and resurrection. They didn't understand what his kingdom was going to look like. They didn't understand that he had come to be a servant and to die and to do all these things. They thought, and they still had this in the back of their mind, like the Pharisees did, that he was going to come in like a king and he was going to conquer and he was going to kick the Roman Empire out and establish this, the temple and sit on the throne in Jerusalem, and it was going to be an earthly kingdom that ruled. They just didn't understand that it was a spiritual kingdom. And so he's trying to, I think, help with that identity as well. And so to reveal his identity too soon, again, would just stir up the crowds. It would give people the wrong expectations of what he had come to do. And he tries really hard to explain to them who he is and what he's going to do, but it just never sticks. And so then you can read this again in Luke 4:38 through 41. So again, we see Jesus. He is showing his power over illness, over demons, over any type of sickness that comes along. I mean, we never see anywhere where someone came to Jesus and he wasn't able to heal them. And so he's showing this true power and the true nature of everything that he has power of, and it's more and more proof of who he is, and the people are seeing that. And again, but he's still trying to slow that process down, and we'll see again where he tells people not to tell people who, or he tells people that he's healed or whatever not to tell people who he is. And so again, so we're here. We are tomorrow. We're going to look at Jesus continuing to preach throughout Galilee. This is the area that he's in. And again, I hope that you're enjoying these videos. If you are, please share them. Please subscribe if you haven't subscribed. We want to get our subscriber count up just because that helps us reach more people with these lessons. So, we get people a better understanding of the Bible. Again, as always, thank you for watching.